Live. Get your fantasy basketball questions going because we're going to answer them. Michael Bolton, get your thoughts together.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, or as the ladies like to call me, Hey You Behind the Bushes. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Blue Sky, joshloyd.bsky.social, on Twitter at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Also, head across to lockedondaily.com, subscribe, get the newsletter 5 days a week into your inbox for your favorite NBA team. That would be awesome. That would be great. We're here answering questions. It is Skip the Straw Day. This is just raw dog glasses. That's it. Don't worry about the straws. Paper, plastic, who cares? Just raw dog it. Don't worry about it. All right, we are here to talk what we need to talk about. Fantasy basketball, of course, that is. We are here to discuss the old, whatever questions you've got. And I see that maybe this is influenced by the thumbnail, but there's questions about the Bulls center situation, which we'll talk about in a second. But just again, I think maybe we'll make it a tradition, and tradition that lasts from last show to this show, because if there's one more of these, you're going to get Ricardo'd. Ash says, I can't believe you told us Aldama is not a must-hold. Cool, Ash, I don't care. I actually don't care whether you dropped Aldama or not. Shanti Aldama is on a real hot streak at the moment. He was struggling earlier on. I apologize if you dropped Aldama, but I know that you're so good in your league. You're right at the top, so it's all good, man. You're going to kill everybody. You're the best. Don't comment again. All right. Jalen Smith is questionable for tomorrow, Sean Chang says. So the people are asking the questions. David says, I'm more interested to know what is going on with Vuce. Is he coming back? I don't know. But we did talk for months and months and months and months that at some point during the season, Vuce would likely not be starting for the Bulls through trade, fake injury, or benching. It was part of the reason why, despite people's protestations, I was not on drafting Vuce in the top 50 or top 40 or top 30 or whatever it was. So I don't know if he's coming back. I also don't know who's going to be their starting center if Vuce is not there. Now he's out with this, whatever they're calling it, calf injury, right? So here's the thing that we do with this. We don't know. I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. We have to put together all the information that we know. Jalen Smith has passed the concussion protocol test for Chicago. The last time that Nikola Vucevic and Jalen Smith were healthy, Zach Collins played 0 minutes. He was out of the rotation. Then, Jalen Smith got a concussion, played 2 minutes. Zach Collins was the backup. Then, Vuce went down with a calf injury. So Collins started. So logic, which doesn't always apply, logic would suggest that Jalen will come back and he will take back the starting job because he was second in order behind Vuce. And like I've said a million times on this show, I believe that part of the reason he signed in Chicago is he was told he was going to get a run at starting at center for this team. But I don't know that. Zach Collins was really good yesterday. And I would think that I would look to add both of those players, because honestly, if they go 24-24 minute split, it's probably enough to have value. Who would I prefer? I would lean towards Smith, even though that feels counterintuitive because Collins just went 21-17 yesterday. And it is hard to go, oh, I'll take the guy who didn't have 21-17. That's hard to do. But again, who knows what William Donovan II is cooking up? I don't know what Billy's doing. Is he going to go, all right, well, Collins was great in that one game. Now he's our starter and it's not Jalen? Or does he go back to the plan that was interrupted by an unfortunate concussion? I don't know. If I would try to make sure both Zach Collins and Jalen Smith were rostered, I don't know what's happening with Vuce. He literally might miss this next game and then be back the one after. I don't know. But the indications, all of the smell, the smoke, the thoughts around this Bulls team suggest to me that Smith will be ahead of Collins. But I don't know that. I honestly just don't know that. And that's going to make it tough, isn't it? Old man Andersey says, do I believe Donovan Vucevic's injury isn't serious. Like, I don't know. Again, I don't know. I think that it doesn't sound serious. Nothing serious happened. We never saw anything serious happen. But I think it's going to be one of those on again, off again sort of injuries. Galahad says, I have Cam Thomas and Johnny Kuminga on IL. Okay, that's great. Would you recommend keeping both there? I didn't mean for that to sound sarcastic, Galahad. Would you recommend keeping both there? I realize I don't have the questions up on the screen. I'll have them up now. I have Cam Thomas and sorry, just new tech stuff sorting out. Go back to this. Cam Thomas and John Kuminga on IL. Would you recommend keeping them both there until their roles or minutes ramp up or are better defined? It's a good question, Galahad, because that is a strategy you can do. Is you don't always have to activate, especially these back end, middle end sort of players. You don't have to activate them immediately. If I could, and it wasn't sacrificing my ability to make other moves and streams, and I didn't need that, yeah, I would. I think that, honestly, I think that when Kuminga comes back, you are going to end up dropping him anyway. I think he's not going to play 32 minutes. I don't think he's going to have enough usage to be good enough to be a must-hold player. He was doing some good stuff before the injury, but he was the number 2. He'll be the number 3 now. And that's going to make it really hard, I think, for him to do enough because he doesn't do anything in the other categories. So I would try to hold and see how it looks for Kuminga, but I do think that your end decision for him will be dropping him versus activating him. Cam Thomas is a different story. He will probably get a lot of shots and be inefficient, but I would like to wait for... Thomas has been out forever, obviously. So I'd like to wait on that one a little bit as well. How do I view Fox rest of season? I don't know how to judge that. Like, he's obviously not playing very well at all. The Spurs in general aren't playing very well at all. I am not someone who is scared of shutdowns at all. I think they are completely and horrifically overblown and overstated. And when players get injuries, usually what happens is it's an injury and it's a marginally exaggerated injury, and they just stay out an extra week over the final 2.5 weeks of the season. So I'm not worried about it. I think he'll be better than what he currently is, though, because at the moment, he's not very good. Alec, we're going to talk about this because these backup centers are a key topic in fantasy at the moment. I know I talked about Zach Collins already, but Alex says, sorry if I already asked, is Zach Collins the same level as Shaedon Sharpe? Is it worth dropping one for the other? Shaedon Sharpe is a better player than Zach Collins. There is a clearer path for Zach Collins, sort of. The clear path is the starting center in Chicago is currently injured and I don't know if he's coming back. But also, like we detailed earlier, Zach Collins was the third string center. So you could be in a situation where Vooch does stay out, but Collins is playing reserve minutes the same as Shaedon Sharpe, and I would rather Sharpe in that spot. So again, these are tough questions. I believe in a 12-team league. Collins, Smith, and Shaedon Sharpe should all be on someone's roster for now. Again, next game, Claxton's going to come back. Sharpe will probably play 18 minutes and still be good and good enough, but it won't be the explosion we saw last time out. Collins might be racist, but he is also racist. I don't know what any of that means. Is Zach Collins racist? I don't think so. Maybe he is. I've got no idea. Don't know anything to prove that. Joel Cuthbert says, will Keon Johnson still be rostered with Cam Thomas, D'Lo, and Clowney? Joel, it's a really good question, isn't it? Because Keon does need volume. Because he's inefficient, and that's where his value comes from. He's getting a lot of shots. He's doing some other stuff with steals and stuff at the moment, which is good. I believe that there will be some minimal marginal dips at some point through here. I don't think that D'Lo is going to be playing all these games. I don't know if Thomas returns it, and Clowney doesn't really impact Keon at all. So I think the advice on Keon at the moment is probably just hold him, and then we see how these adjustments go. But it is going to be, I think they're going to be an incredibly messy roster, much like Washington, for the rest of the season. Absolutely, you hold Shaedon Sharpe in a 14-team league without any question whatsoever. Like, no question about that. Mike, I'm going to say I'm not worried about anybody getting shut down, apart from certain players in Utah. But I didn't draft them for that particular reason. All right, we'll get some more questions in here. But before we do that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Yeah, when the game tips off, the NBA action, it's just getting started. And there is no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets all the way through NBA games from opening tip. It's done. It's dust. Who cares? But you can still do stuff halftime, after the first quarter, in the middle of the second quarter. What's the spread looking like? Who's going to win? Do I think the comeback's on the cards? I can do my live bets as well. And Group them all together, increase my odds in a live bet same game parlay. And right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just go to fanduel.com to join today. That is fanduel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. All right. Let's get back in here, look at some questions that you guys have. All right, there's a lot of very wordy questions here, but Back Brunson says, I don't want to sell Hartenstein. Okay, don't do that. But if I don't want to sell him low, but if I got an offer of a top 70 player, should I accept it? Yeah, you should. Obviously, things are really down at the moment for Hartenstein. I really like Isaiah Hartenstein, obviously, as a player, but I think top 70 value for him with Chet there is probably a stretch. I don't think he does that. So if you were somehow miraculous, I don't think you got any shot at that, by the way. I don't think anyone's giving you a top 70 player. But yeah, absolutely. If I could get a top 85, 90 player for Hartenstein, I think I would probably do that. Do I think Jeremy Sohan unseats the pencil? Harrison Barnes. I'm just going to make sure this sound is loaded up. Barnesy! Yeah, look, it's tough, but I do think, yeah, well, not at the moment, obviously he's dealing with a head issue, but I do think so, but I think you'd be waiting a long time. I think you might be waiting until, I'll just say middle of March at least for that to be something that goes down. Okay. Let's go. What are my thoughts on Sari? Came back 2 games, hit career high points, and out with the same ankle sprain. Well, what's my thoughts on him? He sprained his ankle again. It's giving soreness. He will play. As long as he is healthy, he is going to play, and he's going to get opportunities, much like he has all season. I can't predict how long the severity of an ankle sprain is going to be, so I don't really know how to put my value on that. Obviously, he's not doing enough to make you think that he's a must-hold guy. He's not producing at that level. So again, this is all going to come down to where are you? Are you 8th and you need to win the next 2 weeks to get into 6th to make the playoffs? Are you sitting in first? Are your playoffs starting? Because your approach to all this is very different. If you need production right now, then don't hold him. If you don't, and you can wait a week to see where it goes, then do. But I can't tell you when he's coming back from an ankle sprain. With March just around the corner, do I think an injury to Grant will open up minutes and shots for Sharpe? Yes, I do. I do think that Jeremy Grant will once again not play games through the second half of March into April, but it's not based on anything in particular, but history. Will it open up more for Sharpe? Probably. Now, remember, Shaedon Sharpe has been absolutely horrific in basically every game apart from the last one, which was a game against the Wizards. And the last time that I think it was Jeremy Grant was out, you know who started? Chris Murray. And there are 2 guys on the bench, Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson, who could easily jump into starting lineups. So I wouldn't be putting all my hopes on Shaedon Sharpe. Again, it's impossible to resist that level of production from last game. But he doubled up everyone else's shot attempts. It required Avdia being down after playing 5 minutes, and does all of the past sins of his lack of effort and carelessness get erased because he had a really good game? I'm not sure. I'm not even sure his upside's all that high, to be honest. But I don't mind it. Dr. Mario, stop screaming in all caps, mate. Yuri, it's a good question. Excluding myself, what fantasy analyst gameplay impressed you the most? Who is the most competitive? I wish I had a good answer for you on this one. There's a lot of people, obviously, who do these, who are fantasy analysts and are in leagues. The competitiveness or their gameplay. I wish that I had more time to sit and dissect each of my leagues and go through and, honestly, I've sat on these shows the last 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, 6 days and talking about, Zach Collins, look at Dayron Sharpe, you need to know that. You know who didn't even bother checking his own waiver wire to see if those guys are available? Like me. Because by the time I finished working for the day, I said, man, I'm done. I'm going to go cook dinner. I'm packed it in. I just forgot to have a look at my waiver wire. So I didn't even check to see what moves other people have made. Kingy's always really active in doing that. But honestly, nearly everyone who does this as a fantasy analyst is got their own ideas and they're strong at doing it. And most of the time, the strategies they do are very strong. So I don't really have a specific answer there. if Kingy was here on the show, I'd tell him to his face that he's terrible and he doesn't know what he's doing. But he's pretty active at going out there, and he's always got a very set strategy, which is a good way of going about it, I think. Is Mark Williams and Kristaps Porzingis worth keeping? Why are you here? I don't understand this question, my guy. So I'm going to use you because, again, you're relatively anonymous with that name. I'm going to use you to, let's start a discussion and clown on you a little bit. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Why would they not be worth keeping? And I know what you're going to say. Oh, but they sit games here and there. I don't care. You are talking about a top 20 per game player in Kristaps Porzingis. And honestly, a top 40 per game player in Mark Williams. Yeah, they sat some back-to-backs. Are they worth keeping? What are you going to do? Just drop them for nothing? Guys, we need to be very, very cautious about some of the ideas and thoughts that we have. Yeah, if you've got someone like Jeremy Grant or Kyle Kuzma who are sitting at the back end of a roster and you go, oh, is it worth keeping? Like, no, you can stream in more value. You are talking about elite top-end talent here. So, yeah, they're worth keeping. Sorry about that. Nurkic didn't play last game. He's questionable with an illness. Is he a drop in a 20-team league? I would guess, old mate Shamari Rawlins, that if you look on your waiver wire, you're not going to find much in a 20-team league that's going to potentially do more than Nurkic. And the fact that he's questionable with an illness might suggest to you maybe that's why he didn't play last game. But also, it's not like, hey, he's got a knee sprain, he's out for 4 weeks, Ariel Hukporti style with a torn meniscus. It's an illness. It might last one game. I wouldn't be quick to drop in a league that size someone who honestly was producing like top 120 numbers even in 21 minutes a night. It doesn't make any sense in that sort of a scenario. Now, if he ends up with Ebola and he's out for 2 months, then sure, that's probably not someone you want to hold on to, but he's literally not even ruled out for the next game. He might not play, I don't know, but in a league that deep, that doesn't seem like it's the right decision. I don't know. We'll find out, won't we? Dr. Mario, no. I can't bring back the old Barnesy song. I'm not sure if you're aware, I used to have about 50 different sound drops that I used, and guess what? I can't use them anymore. Yeah, so no, I can't. Mark, I cannot do it. Do you have any crazy Australian wildlife stories or some scary run-ins? No. It's not a thing. I live in a city. Once, on our local community Facebook group, there was a picture of a kangaroo in a street, but that's it. No. The idea, Americans have this idea of Australia, everything's trying to kill you out here, the snakes, I've never seen any of it. Sure, there's an occasional snake around, but literally I've never laid eyes on a snake anywhere. Are there some spiders? Sure, they're like tiny. This is a completely overblown story. Do I expect Delano Banton to go on a similar run last season? Portland seems to be more stacked this year, and they're not that bad neither. Are they more stacked? They've got like one extra player, and that is Denny Avdia. But this is part of the thing that I talked about with Avdia in the preseason, where people were like, man, he's going to do so much. He's on a way worse team than Washington. I go, he's absolutely not. This team has actually got a bunch of really good players. They're in a weird spot, and the coaching has been iffy at times, and the fit doesn't make any sense. But you're right. They've got a lot of good players, and Banton is not even in the rotation. Do I expect him to go on a run? It's going to take 2 to 3 guys being out. Remember last season, Simons was out, and Shaedon Sharpe was out, and Avdia wasn't on the team, and Grant wasn't there. That's what it took. So, sure, any of these things can happen. There's a lot of steps for us to get there, though, and we're not there yet. And holding is like basically a literal 0, and for some games it literally will be 0, is a terrible strategy for most leagues. For most situations. Do I have a favorite or least favorite team commentator? The Hornets one is hilarious. That's interesting, LCP. Can I ask a question? I might not even see your reply on this, but how old are you? You like under 25? To me, this is interesting because he gets Eric Collins. He's super passionate. He's super involved. He's very loud. He's very at times like funny. But I feel like he's got this popularity with the Instagram crowd and younger crowd because of the over-the-top. It's like, I don't know, I feel old saying this, like the gaming type overreactions where people scream into microphones and actually like hits peak audio, just gives you this random feedback noise. I feel like that sort of style is that what he appeals to. For me, I don't actually need my broadcasters to do that. I like some of the older school ones. Like, I'm a big Mark Jackson guy, Reggie Miller, huge. Of course, I'm not. They're terrible. Or the guys that I like, Breen, Iron Eagle, I think is great. I just want straightforwardness, excitement, passion, good words, proper timing and spacing in their words. So I think he's fine. The ones I don't like are the ones that don't know what they're talking about. And there are a few of those scattered around the league who are just absolutely horrendous. The Lakers can be bad. The Warriors are terrible. The Sixers are pretty bad. The Rockets used to be useless. They've improved quite a bit as well. The Heat ones can get a little bit annoying. I'm not a big over-the-top guy in terms of announcing. Is Jose Alvarado a drop? Well, given the context, yeah. Is Jose Alvarado a drop? Well, given the context, no. How would I know, Johnny? Maybe, maybe not. He played 20 minutes in the last game. He played 30 minutes the game before. Bruce Brown is out today. He'll probably play 30-plus minutes today. And we will see how they decide to use him. So if they're going to drop him, you definitely don't do it today when two of the rotation players are out. And then, there was nothing prior to last game that suggested that Jose was going to play 20 minutes. He'd been getting 30 off the bench. So again, I don't know what your context is, but I would be holding, at least for today, to see what's going on. Just to see how it all plays out, I guess. Got a very interesting question here, which comes up every season. Every season, somebody asks this. He says, I hit you up on Twitter. Sorry, I didn't see it. There's a lot there that I see and don't see. Can you talk about managers not setting lineups for seeding in the last week of the season? I can talk about it. I don't care. I do not care. To me, if you want to try and manipulate, and someone will say, watch the fantasy gods. That's not real. Don't worry about that. I would say if you think that you're gaining yourself an advantage by manipulating a result in a week to try and land a particular seed, I think that's all well and good. I will say this, you actually don't know what you're doing. For the majority, I wouldn't know what I'm doing. Well, I'll do this and I'll play this opponent. Because you know what happens a lot in fantasy? Variance. You know what sometimes happens? Zach Collins goes off for 21 and 17. Bol drops a 30 burger. Shaedon Sharpe takes 30 shots in a game. And the opponent that you tanked to play against has all three of those guys on their team for 1 week. So I am very much against collusion. If you are not setting your lineups because your friend gave you a sneaky wristy or $20 under the table so they could make the playoffs, that is 100% not on. If you are doing it so that you can find yourself losing to get into a better seed, go for it. I think it is totally, unless it is against the rules in your league, and that's been decided upon, I think it is a completely reasonable strategy to do. But I also think it has almost no provable success rate. The only way I'd look at it is go, hey, the guy that I'm going to end up playing if I lose this matchup, his team has got Anthony Davis, Victor Wembanyama, it's got Vooch on it, he was right at the top of the standings, and now look how bad his team is, then that makes a lot of sense. But otherwise, no. Do I find a correlation between being the most active manager on the waiver wire and success in fantasy? Yes. And this depends on your league. If every person in your league is incredibly active on the waiver wire, then there is no advantage to that. Because everyone's doing it, then you've got to be more focused in your approach. But as a general rule, have a look in your leagues, and you could prove it wrong or right, whatever, but have a look in your leagues. I would say that a lot of them, the players up the top, sit with the most waiver moves, usually because they're on top of what's going on. And as we showed in the streaming preview show in the All-Star break, is that if you're just getting more games in, you're gonna just stomp through pretty easily. Australian spiders are not tiny. Huntsmen themselves are massive. They're like that big. What is a massive spider? Like, they are that big. They are not big. Huntsmen are around everywhere. Also, they're not venomous at all. They're literally that big. I don't know what redback spiders, which are actually, they are venomous. They're like that big. They're tiny. Are you telling me, Albert, I don't know if you live in Australia. I live in Australia. Huntsmen they're literally that big. They're the size of like a quarter, maybe, for those of you in America. Islam Ahmed, after all the bullshit we've seen from tanking teams like resting players and faking injuries, in the future, would you consider drafting players from playoff teams even if you have to reach for them? Islam Ahmed, it's a good question that is interesting, and there's a lot to digest with that, and I'll do that now. Like, how much bullshit have we seen? Honestly, we really haven't seen it. What have we seen? I know that, again, people seem to think that this idea, maybe I am, I'm so negative, all I do is complain about stuff. I pump the league up all the time. I talk about the positivity, and I push back on incredibly negative narratives, which are based in, I don't know. Where is all this fake injuries and tanking stuff? Where is it happening? There are a couple. Look, the Utah one, absolutely, right? They have been nonsense with that all season. Who else? Who else has been doing that? That is a narrative that I think that it's at the moment, most of the complaints that come from the fantasy community are teams not sitting out veterans and playing their veterans over their younger, worse players. Why are they prioritizing Kelly Olynyk? Like, I'm complaining even about that. Makes no sense. I don't get, where's this happening? Where are all these fake injuries and all these crazy rests happening? What's going on with it? Also, Islam, would you consider drafting players from playoff teams even if you have to reach for them? Oh, you mean like drafting someone from Philadelphia? Avoiding Pistons players? Like going all in on Phoenix guys? Like, you don't know. The Clippers, they're definitely falling off, man. I'm not going to draft those guys. I'll be shutting guys down through the end of the season. These are strategies that, in theory, make sense if you've got a time machine. But you can't go back to... when I go back and do my season win total over-under retrospective, there are going to be some that I missed on incredibly. And there are going to be plenty of teams... Now, look... I was very much like, hey, I will not consider Lauri Markkanen at all because I know exactly what the Jazz do and they've proven what they do and they will be aggressive at it. Portland, I was like, I think they might do it. They've done it as well. I'm pretty much not going to target a lot of their guys in early rounds, but they didn't really have any early round guys anyway. Everyone else, go for it. I don't mind about it. I don't care. So I think that's all well and good in theory. In practicality, you can't do it. And you're going to end up getting it wrong as many times as you get it right, which leads to literally no advantage to you. And I'm sorry for that being a long answer. No, don't roster Ben Simmons in a 12-team league. Absolutely not. What about Walt Frazier? We're back to announcers, are we? Yeah, he's interesting. He's interesting. I don't mind him. He's pretty funny. What do you do with Isaiah Hartenstein? You're in an 18 points league. In that league, I'm going to suggest Aaron. That you can tell me better than anything, but my guess is if you have a look at Hartenstein's points over the last week, 2 weeks, or even month, it's going to be within 1 to 2 points of the guys that are sitting on the waiver wire, and that, my good friend Aaron, means jack him off. Get that garbage out of here! You're in an 8-team league. I'm going to assume that means 100 players rostered, meaning that your bottom, only the top 60 guy or top 70 guy really should be held on to. Everyone else can be cycled through. Giddy was on the Sell High show yesterday. Yep, that's true. Good question. Any chance of adding the question part to that so we can see what you're talking about? Is Cam Thomas an ad or are many rests coming? Did something happen with Cam Thomas? Is he have they announced that he's returning or something? Let me double check that. I don't believe I've seen anything. He will be rested without question. He's missed 2.5 months with a hamstring injury. He's not coming back and playing 30 minutes off rip. He's going to be limited minutes. He's going to sit back-to-backs. And he's not even available yet, is he? He's not back until next week at the earliest. So, yeah, he's going to be rested a lot. Is Buzelis safe to continue starting rest of the season? No, it's literally the opposite. There's no safety at all in Matas Buzelis. You saw it last game. The game before was huge. The game before that was bad. The game before that was bad. He's feeling he's a stream guy when the schedule makes sense. That's it. I wouldn't be bothered holding him in standard leagues. What is your counter argument to having the draft order in a redraft league be determined by last year's standings? The counter argument is you have to have made sure that is discussed prior to the beginning of the season. Secondly, you got to make sure those players are all returning the next year. The third part of it is you've got to have some sort of rule in place to prevent aggressive tanking. Because what will happen in that spot is the teams that then become eliminated from the playoffs or think they're not making it, they will just not set any lineups at all. They'll deliberately go for zeros to try and get the first pick in the draft. The other thing you've got to decide is when your fantasy playoffs start, does other teams participate at all? Do they play like some sort of tournament? I know some teams do this where the teams that get knocked out play a consolation tournament, a consolation playoffs, and the winner of the consolation playoffs gets the number one pick or gets to choose their draft spot, which is not a bad idea if you want to do it that way. But you've got to make sure all this stuff is set before the season, because despite what you may think and what you may have done, some people will plan this stuff out and they will have their ideas of how they're doing it. And you can't just drop it in week 19 and go, hey, by the way, if you finish last, you get the number one pick. Can't do that. Hey, we're going to have a tournament now. Then the winner wins the number one pick. You go, well, I just dumped all my guys because I thought I was getting number one pick if I finished last. You got to have that planned out. All right, let's have a look. What is happening to Sabonis' production lately? Is Zach affecting his production? I think that he's in a bit of a slump at the moment. I think there's been some games recently with some foul trouble. Do I think Zach LaVine is impacting his production? Honestly, he shouldn't be, because LaVine is just replacing De'Aaron Fox. It's a one-for-one switch, and they both had high usage. It is a little bit of a change because DeRozan and LaVine are stepping up and doing their thing, which doesn't always involve others. So it is a bit of a LaVine problem and coaching problem, for sure. But I would also feel okay that Sabonis is going to have at least some level of bounce back. Danger Riz. Keon Johnson or Zay Williams or Bazelis in 9-cat. Seems like they provide better value than Bazelis, and is Kevin Huerter worth it? No on Kevin Huerter. But that you are talking about, and again, this is a general question as we're going to get ready to wrap this show up, a general idea or a general question regarding fantasy and fantasy production. When you are talking about Keon Johnson, Zay Williams, Matas Bazelis, and you're making decisions on who you're adding off the waiver wire, which one is better, the answer is none of them. The answer is none of them. The reason the answer is none of them, as what I have detailed a lot, is that if you just use that roster spot to cycle through, you will get about 4 extra games per week. And I don't care who these guys are, and I know who these guys are, they're not that good, is that they're not going to be good enough to overcome a 6-game-to-2 advantage. So if you're going to sit there and pull your pubes out worrying about who you're going to jump in and grab off the waiver wire and who's the best option for the last spot, the answer is absolutely nobody. It's no one. It's whoever is playing that next day. It's whoever has got a back-to-back. Don't stress yourself over a decision, which if you make the decision and stick to it, will actually end up hurting you no matter which player you take. It doesn't matter who these players are in that particular spot. If they are the last, unless you are talking about a guy, like I've said with Bol, like I've said with Shaedon Sharpe, if he was to start, like if you add that guy, they can jump to be your 7th best player, 6th best player, which you would just use all the time. If you are debating about this sort of a level, the end player on your roster, and who do I add off the waiver wire here? The answer is whoever plays today, and then you move off and you grab the next guy, because there are going to be 50 of these guys who cycle through over the next 6 weeks who are going to be useful in that spot, and you just want to get the guy playing the games. Okay? Don't stress yourself about those sort of decisions. I hope that is clear enough. I hope that's clear. All right. Let's do 2 more questions. Should we be worried about Monk? Since the Levine trade, people are mentioning how they prefer him off the bench and have Alice starting. Okay, Joseph, I'm going to nitpick a little bit about your question there. You go like, people are mentioning. You know what matters? Nothing at all? People. People are mentioning. Who cares what people mention? Have a look what Doug Christie decides to do. Or if there are deliberate leaks through 1 to 2 trusted Sacramento media members. It doesn't matter if a Kings fan goes, oh, they should start Ellis over Monk. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they think. They're not in charge of anything. What do I think about Monk? I think that you just roster him. And if he moves to the bench and plays 23 minutes, you drop him. Seems really unlikely that he's going to play 23 minutes though. And again, don't worry about what people say. If Doug Christie says it, or if a particular Kings reporter says it, and there aren't that many of those guys, like what's the guy from the Sacramento Bee? Jason something? James Ham? Those sort of guys? Okay, take some note. But yeah, that's about where we're looking at, I think. Here's an interesting question we get from Galahad. What's my personal goal as it pertains to your legacy as a fantasy analyst? I don't know. It's a good question. What's my personal goal? I want to be... my goal for my legacy in doing this is to be someone who changes the way the game, the fantasy game, is analyzed. I want it to be so we're not relying upon, well, Giannis was actually the 60th best player, and Mikal Bridges was 7th. There's our fantasy drafts. I want to be someone who flips the narrative entirely regarding the analysis of players, ranking systems, ideas and thoughts regarding those ranking systems and variances and schedule plays, who institutes all of the, not all of them. I want to be someone who creates at least 1 to 2 different things that can be talked about for 20 or 30 years as seminal, innovative, new research that shapes the way that people play the game. That is my goal with this, to improve everyone's understanding of playing through novel research and information that hasn't been seen before, and leads to better evaluation, more fun, more accuracy, and better results. That's how I want to do it. And, have a bit of a bloody laugh while we're doing it as well. Okay. Should we do one more question? How often do I play basketball? Peter, I don't play basketball. I am a 45-year-old man with a torn ACL who also works 100 hours a week, and I'm not a good basketball player. So never. I played basketball for a couple of years, suffered a grade 3 ankle ligament tear that still sort of sored today and put me off my feet for a long time, and never went back and played after that, and now have a torn ACL. So yeah, I don't. What's my take on... always a lot of Sohan and Barnes questions. What's my take on Sohan and Barnes rostering them? You don't. Again, you've given no context, but if you're in a 10-team league, what are you talking about? If you're in a 12-team league, get out of here. If you're in a 14-team league, maybe I'd still prefer Sohan over Barnes, but these are back-end garbage level producers at the moment. I think Sohan's obviously better than Barnes, and if they keep losing, they'd like to see them give a little bit more to him, but these are things you're not worrying about in standard leagues. And the next thing you're not worrying about is when this show is going to end, because that time is right now. So, skip the straw. I hope you got something out of the show. I hope actually you got a laugh. I hope you got some fun. I hope you got some information out of it. And I hope I wasn't too mean to you. Guys, hit the sub button on the way out. You can also hit the subscribe button. There is a hidden sub button there if you want to hit that, and I'll get in contact with you later. But hit the subscribe, hit the thumb up, leave your comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.